Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Castle Rock Season 1, Episode 7. It is called The Queen. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, this episode focuses on Ruth, and it kind of takes us through a lot of the previous events of the season, where we kind of see things from her perspective, where she's kind of jumping between various times. And obviously answers the cliffhanger from last week and where we're going with that. Joe, what's funny is that it didn't occur to me last week, like anything. Now, admittedly, when we got to the end of last week's episode, we had no indication that there was a gun involved. But when we got the previously on it this week, and we got that story again from Pangborn about how he went to the house and there was like reports of gunfire, I immediately said, "Oh, whatever happens at the end of last episode and into this one, that's what the gunfire was, with some timey-wimey elements going back and forth."
I think what I like most about this episode, what it establishes, we spoke a lot last week about when she told the story about the chess pieces, and we were like, okay, so is she really jumping through time? Is she experiencing this?
Yeah.
And this presents it as she might be,
We don't know for sure.
it could just be a symptom of her Alzheimer's, and this is just her coping mechanism.
Because the first thing I noticed is that the chess pieces don't actually seem like they're actually that reliable. Like she'll pick them up and she'll still be in that time period, and then later on, her husband, Henry's father, Matthew, he like speaks to her with knowledge of the future and speaks as if he is just a figment of her imagination.
Yeah, that one's the key exception. I think we'll talk about that one separately. But with the chess pieces themselves, I don't think it's as much as, okay, she sees them and then she immediately drags herself out to the present day, but it always makes her aware that she's not actually there for real, right? She's suddenly aware that, okay, it's actually this year and I'm just reliving this.
Because there's several moments where she'll then look at herself, and it's still Sissy Spacek typically. There's a couple of moments we see a younger actress playing her, but it kind of shifts into her. There's the idea being that, she didn't look like this at this time period, but from her current perspective, she's always looking like her.
Yes.
So we get to keep Sissy Spacek playing the character no matter what time period we're in.
It's a clever cheat.
It is a bit of a cheat, but at the same time it works because you kind of want the same actress so that it's the same performance, and it's
Yeah, because it's notable. There's points where you have young Alan.
Yeah, young Alan, young Henry, even when he's a kid. He's like 10. Of course, it's a different actor.
Yeah. Exactly. But with her, because she's the focal point, you want to keep her there. You want that same actress to just deliver that role.
And there's several points once you get into the rhythm of it where I could predict what scene from earlier in the season we were about to go into, based on where she was. The one was like when she picks up the piece, I was like, oh, she's going to be standing at the fridge. This is when she's, when he says to her, I've got breakfast, mum, or I've got lunch, mum, whatever the line was.
There's the one where Henry and Alan are arguing about the signing the stuff, and she came in and at the time she goes, oh, just all the sheets.
Yeah.
And we just thought, oh, she's having a moment, right?
Yeah.
And here we see what that actually was in reference to now.
There was context for it, yes. There was blood on the sheets, which was seemingly from a previous time when the dog they had when Henry was a kid would bring in dead birds.
Yeah.
But obviously there's not anything there now. But no, it's an interesting episode, and I think it sticks out to me. It feels like that episode in the first season, and I'm trying to think of another example of one of these, but I feel like there's a lot of shows, especially mystery shows, where they'll have this episode where it doesn't answer a bunch of stuff, but it takes you into a character who's been kind of the weird outlier compared to everyone else, and we see things from their perspective, and it adds a whole new viewpoint, a whole new dynamic to the show and what it's doing. And it typically ends up being one of the highlights of the season because it does it, and especially when it does it in a way where you come out appreciating what it's doing more because you see it from this viewpoint. And I think it mostly succeeds in that. I think my only real criticism is that I do kind of feel like it's not quite as good as other examples that you can maybe think of.
Yeah, I think what drives me is it doesn't quite have a spark, right? It doesn't have that's where this is going. Like it doesn't give you enough for the future. Whereas it tells us a lot, recontextualizes a lot of the season so far, but it doesn't give us teases for what's coming next. Not really.
It doesn't give us teases for what's coming next. It does add a lot more to the mystery of who the kid is and his connection to things. Because now we've kind of speculated, because we know that he's not aged in 27 years. my question then would be, when he's in that trunk, when Pangborn saw him in that trunk, was that after the death of Henry's father?
I'm not sure.
That's an important question I have, because everything that he does in this episode with Ruth and the way she sees him, it very much feels, and especially, this is going to sound strange, but when young Wendell explains his video game to her about the time wreath or whatever the enemy was,
Yeah.
the idea that, oh, it doesn't die, it just gets a new skin, it just changes its appearance. The rest of the episode very much implies that her husband was in some way evil himself and has somehow transformed into the kid, or he's part of the kid. The kid is somehow channeling him in some way.
Yeah.
And it adds extra elements to that moment. She's like, "Oh, I swear I burnt." You know, it's funny because we debated a little bit that moment where she looks out and sees him standing in the suit, and I says, "No, is she talking about him? She thought she buried him in the suit." And then you corrected me and said, "No, she actually said the line father." I was like, "Okay, fair enough. I didn't remember that." And then in this episode, again, you hear the line, "Oh, your father." She answers that question, but I have to laugh because given what it's implying now, both are correct.
It was. I stand by what I said last week at the time.
I was onto something. I didn't know what I was onto, but I was onto something.
You were basically just making an offhand joke, but you kind of hit the nail on the head.
Genius. No.
But no, I agree with what you're saying about Alan and whether or not he, did he see this in the trunk and go, and did he recognize that this was Matthew in some way and leave him in there intentionally?
And yeah, in some way, not necessarily. I wouldn't even say consciously. Like, I wouldn't necessarily think he actually saw and went, "Oh, that's the reincarnation of Ruth's husband, who I thought was an asshole the way he treated her."
Yeah, lock him up.
Yeah, lock him up. And I didn't get that impression, but yeah, like maybe in some sort of deep level, maybe he could sense what he was, and that's why he made the absurd call as a sheriff to not arrest this guy who's got a young man in his
even if
trunk.
it wasn't so much that he recognized him, more just he got the same sort of feeling that he did. That when he looked at Matthew and he knew him reasonably well, right? He had to have done.
Yeah, you see him at church when he's giving his sermon, and you see, of course, a lot more of the father, and because obviously from Henry's perspective, we got that he didn't like him as a kid, and we get that through Molly's feelings about the matter and how she's kind of conveying that. But I think what's interesting about this one is it does seem like he was actually quite awful before he died, and no one seems to remember it. No one seems to remember this specifically, Henry especially. But it seems like, no, he was taking him out there, and he there's a scene where he takes him out, and he basically talks about how he's trying to commit suicide, and then he heard the voice of God, and he wants Henry to see if he can hear it, and then eventually, Henry says, "No, I did hear it. I'm not just saying that to." Just because that's what he wants to hear. I heard it.
And we know that's true because he has been hearing the noise the same thing that Matthew believes is the voice of God.
Yeah, and of course, some of the fun that comes from all this is that in the present day stuff, where she makes the choice to stay clear. From the conversation with Wendell, she starts throwing out all her medication, and that's kind of what we didn't know that's what she was doing last episode, but that's what she was doing when she spilled the pills. And the kid comes in, and she sees her husband first, then it switches to the kid. And throughout this main present day part of the episode, where we keep coming back to, she's very aware that she's in danger. She knows she's in danger in some way, and he's putting on the old music. He's wearing his clothes, and it suddenly makes sense why he was so obsessed with watching the tapes last week or the last couple of weeks, and why he was obsessed with looking at the various things around the house. And he dances with her, but she knows she's in danger, so she tries to get the gun, and she can't find the bullets. Oh, they're in the safe. But I like how we find elements out of this in different timelines. Like, from this part of the history, she hears it from the husband, and then she asks him, "What's the combination to the safe?" And she can't think of where the bullets are. They're not in the safe. Crap, where are they? And it's like, oh no, that dog that you made, or Pangborn had to kill, that he's been digging up repeatedly in the back. It's that suitcase you were going to run away in because Pangborn asked you to run away with him. And then she finds the bullets, and it all comes down to this sad ending where it's not him she shot. When the door opens and you hear the gunshot, she's like, "Shit, that's Pangborn." This is the end of last week when he ran in the house. This is is his search for her, and she sees him. And when she comes out the next morning, and the Max Richter music starts playing, which I recognised immediately because I like that track, and it was used in Arrival, which I think is very funny given what the plot of Arrival is. I won't
Yeah.
spoil it, just in case you've not seen that movie. Let's just say there's a lot of parallels to this episode of Castle
Yep.
Rock. So I don't know if that was even an intentional little wink, wink in the choice of
It
music.
could have been, yeah.
But she walks over to the house and she's getting herself ready as if nothing's happened. And I went, oh, this is going to be when he came back after those years for the first time. Because at the start of the episode, it's when he's bringing her back from the hospital, and he said, "Do you remember what you said to me when I came back to your door after all those years, those 14 years away?" And she's like, "Yeah, I asked you not to leave." And he's like, "See, it's all up there. You knew it all." So it reminded us of that moment. And at the end of the episode, she opens the door and he's there, and it's that moment where she asks him not to leave after she's just killed him, and she knows she's just killed him.
Yeah,
and
it's tragic.
Yeah, it's great. This is good stuff. It's got some elements of some different things. One of my favorite episodes of Fringe is an episode called White Tulip, which is fantastic. There's a slight element of this and that I can kind of sense a little bit. Just in the way that it kind of plays with time, but the character already knew something, and it kind of adds a new context to it. Like just playing with that stuff. So it was very effective in that, and the ending was quite kind of beautiful because of that.
It just, if you weren't really here maybe into the idea of what the episode was doing structurally with the different time periods and jumping around, this moment makes it all worth it.
Yeah,
it's like
this is why.
This is why they did this.
Yeah, I mean, don't worry, it's fun up until that point because you're discovering all these various things in different times. But no, there's a lot of really interesting. And again, like I say, all the stuff that's implied with his father, that he was actually off his rocker before his death. Like there's, he was essentially constantly wary of the kid, and say the kid, sorry, I should say Henry. He's constantly wary of Henry and making him pray and being suspicious of him and wanting him to like come out and fight. And it does actually add some credence to like we speculated last week. Did he like pick Henry when they were adopting someone? Did he specifically go out of his way to get Henry because of where he came from, because of who his parents were? Possible.
It's possible, yeah. I do as well that this is the kid's vengeance, right, on Alan, because that was his whole thing last week was he sent him on the wild goose chase to do all the stuff with the promise that he was gonna fix Ruth, and then he gets back and he's terrified. And this is, presumably the kid's influence again. We keep having to bring that up all season.
Yeah.
And I'd say this is his. I think this is the first time it's felt really intentional and vindictive.
Yeah. Here's a question though. So he has an influence on him. I'm getting the impression he doesn't have the same influence on her. I feel like her side of it, where she's there for the gun, like he had to sort of set that up differently from how, because I think with everyone else he can just kind of influence them and make them do things.
You had to kind of talk her into it.
He had to manipulate her in a traditional way almost.
I think he has some influence in that. I think he kind of influenced what she was seeing when the door opened.
Okay.
A little bit, not as much as everyone else though. Whereas everyone else has a lot more control, it seems.
And I wonder if it's because of the close connection, or is it because of her condition that he just can't influence in the same way?
I'm inclined to say the condition. I think her not really being in sync with reality
makes it hard to get a hold of her.
Get a grasp. Yeah.
I can see that. But yeah, because there's lots of little tidbits. There's a lot of nice little transitions between the various time periods. There's one where she walks out of the sheriff's office and she's in her kitchen, and it's like a dream almost, where she just sort of walks into her kitchen.
Yeah. It'll look good though.
To its credit, it never feels confusing. I don't think it has a really nice through line that keeps it
you always
on track.
knew where you were. If you were ever confused, there was suddenly there's a chess piece. You go, okay, I'm in a past thing, right? And even if it was only like slightly in the past, there was still the chess piece, so you knew, okay, this isn't present day.
Yeah, because the first say 20 minutes of the episode, I'd say that most of the stuff that was happening wasn't so much that we were following her into the past. We were just seeing the context of what she was doing in the previous instances where she seemed like she was being crazy or she was saying something random, and it wasn't until we got back to dealing with the events of the end of the last episode and what actually happened when the kid arrived home. That's when it really started to be her, going into the past and like learning things from the past and using that in the present day.
And let's say I love that. The thing I love most is it doesn't take away any ambiguity. It's still there as to whether or not she really is in the past, or because everything she learns in the past is things she already knew. It's
Well,
just remembering.
well, that's why we have to talk about the husband talking as if he knows they're in the past, and like, you won't get this answer out of me because you didn't know that, and therefore I can't tell you that. And he knows that he's essentially not really just a memory, which implies that she's not actually traveling through time. That implies that it is all just in her head.
It does imply that, yeah, because or at least that instance or that version what she's witnessing, because he acknowledges that no, I'm just a part of your reality. He
What
acknowledges that he's not real.
what if it's like what if it's a bit more like Westworld, where it's not so that she can travel through time. She can basically replay time in her mind. She can witness it, and she can be aware of everything that was going on, but she can't actually. If she tries to interact with it, she'll get nothing new out
Yeah.
of it.
I like that she gets different angles on things, right? It's not
Mm,
just she's not Westworld, they relive it as themselves, right?
yeah,
Whereas here she is an additional person a lot of the time.
yeah. And there's times when her younger version almost can sense that she's there.
Yeah, there's the time in the bed where she's doing the learning the magic tricks,
Yes,
and she looks right at her, and she knows.
yeah, she knows. Yeah, um,
And that's where I'm going. Okay, is this real? Is this playing back into the same thing we were talking about with Henry and that scene from last week and then at the start
yeah.
on the by the lake? I'm like, okay, maybe something's really going on here.
It doesn't. I do get the impression though you can't affect the past too much. It's more like you can visit it and get new information from it, but I don't think she can interact much with it.
No, I agree. I agree. I think it is just about reliving and what she can learn from things that maybe she already knew but has to remember. Um, but I think the key will be, can she learn to control it, or is it just random?
Hmm.
Because right now it's not. The most control she has is becoming aware that it's the past, right?
And is this the schisma? Is she like tapping into the schisma, and it's like, doing? It's obviously it's all related to her life and what she's been through, but it's like
Yeah.
try to realign things, and obviously that again brings up the question, like, if it's possible past and possible presence, can we be misdirected at some point with the wrong past, the one that's
Yeah.
not actually applicable to what's going on?
And then it all comes back to, okay, the gunshots. Did those echo through time? And then that's
Yeah,
what he was
and
told.
that's the evidence to say that there is actually some sort of travel happening,
But
because this is the thing though. She shoots them in present day, but there's reports of them in the past, not from her, from someone else, a neighbor.
well, what I want to say is allegedly. Alan later in the scene admits, you know what, I kind of came back here just for you, right? So what's to say that there actually was reports of gunshots? Because it wasn't like an official report. It's just like, oh, someone phoned me to say
Oh no,
that.
I think this is a bullshit way of thinking about it. Because when he talks to Henry, he's got no reason to lie about that.
Okay, that's fair.
No, I think there was gunshot reports. I don't think that's just a weird red herring of thinking. I feel like that's deliberate setup so that you know that there's some sort of gunshots. Like,
No, you're right. I'm overlooking him telling Henry as well.
yeah, he does tell Henry that in a previous scene. He could have just said, "Oh, he came back and went to talk to her," but he specifically points out there's a weird circumstance where there was gunshots
No,
reported.
you're right. I'm overlooking
Yeah.
the fact that he told Henry.
So
But of course, it could be just okay. A car backfired and someone thought it was a gunshot, and reported it.
I don't think so. I don't think the episode sets it up, or the show sets it up this way, and doesn't have the payoff of no, those gunshots were the gunshots that were fired.
I don't
in the
know, because
future.
I like that it's ambiguous and you can explain it another way. I don't want them to definitively tell me.
I mean, it just depends how they do it. I wouldn't put
I
my foot
think
down
at
and say
this
no. This
point,
will definitely be bad if they tell me.
no, I'm just saying. Okay, at this point, it's an anthology now. Officially we know that. So this story has 3 episodes to go.
Yes.
I think there's a lot to explain if they're going to give definitive answers. I like the ambiguity, and I think it's stronger to leave that. Things like, we had Ruth tell Molly that okay, she saw her in the room that night. She knows what she did.
Yeah, because it's worth mentioning that's the only link to what's going on with Henry right now is she comes over to the house looking for Henry because she can sense that he's lost and something bad might be happening, and that of course is him in the woods, possibly in the chamber that we got
Yeah.
last episode. So That's her link to that stuff.
With Henry, yes, we know something's happening with Henry. I don't know what's going on with Ruth.
But we know she fires a gun in present day, and we know those reports of gunfire in the past. Now, yeah, you could sit here and say, oh, maybe it was some other things that caused those gunshots. To me, what more interesting to talk about is, no, the gun is rippling through time, and if it is rippling through time, like, other people heard that. Why did that get heard when nothing else seems to be transferring for anyone else?
Oh, that's fair. I would argue then, if going with, okay, it is rippling through time. We know the schisma is trying to fix something, yeah, like it's trying to reconcile events. And last week we were theorizing, I said, okay, what was a big enough event? And you thought, oh, maybe it's just little things. It's doing it constantly. What if this shooting is what it's trying to fix? Like, maybe this wasn't supposed to happen this way because she saw it differently, right? She didn't see who she was shooting at first.
Yeah, I mean, it could just simply be that the kid, whatever he's affecting, is changing things that weren't supposed to change.
Yeah.
And Schisma's trying to,
Change it
realign,
back almost.
yeah, realign the time to make it make sense.
Yeah.
Or how about this? What if what she's going through is altering the way things play out because she is getting information from different timelines, and the Schisma is almost reacting to her because she's making decisions based on knowledge she shouldn't have, or whatever, right? So the Schisma is like, wait, this shouldn't be happening this way, because I say that as if the Schisma is a thinking, being that's actually making choices. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like things aren't lining up the way they should because she's got extra information or extra awareness she shouldn't have, despite the fact that she otherwise doesn't have a lot of normal awareness that everyone else does. Yeah. And the Schisma is trying to make sense of that almost, and that's what's causing the ringing, and that's what's causing everything else trying to make sense of it.
Could be, because I think we last week we were constantly saying, okay, what happened that it was trying to fix, right? That was the thing, and because we were like, okay, well, they were hearing the ringing in the past, so we're assuming something happened in the past. But if it is this ripple, it could be something in the future that it's trying to fix, and they're just hearing the ringing from the future.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just the start. Maybe whatever it is actually hasn't happened yet, and we haven't seen it yet. It'll be the end of the season.
But again, that's going with the idea that there's one specific thing, and I'm not convinced it is. I do still think there's a chance where it's just always trying to fix different things.
It could well be, yeah.
Depending on different timelines doing things that.
It is, but like I said, I hadn't considered last week is what happened. If it is one thing, maybe we haven't seen it yet, and it's rippling backwards to them.
That's very possible. I could see that being a thing. And then, I mean, if she isn't actually experiencing anything weird, I guess thematically you could say that it's like a normal representation of what's actually happening with the rest of the universe and what Henry's kind of starting to tap into.
Yeah.
And he can maybe understand her mother's illness in some way. But given they're both closely linked though to his father, I'm inclined to think that he almost in some way is what caused her illness. Let's say her illness isn't just because even the doctor says this is not something we can diagnose right now. We diagnose this typically, we can make a best guess, but we don't diagnose Alzheimer's until after you've died. And what if being close to both Henry and specifically his father in some way actually caused this because of what he was tapping into? And
are you thinking in the same way that the kid caused cancer in that guy?
Maybe, yeah.
And if there's an element of him in there,
it's actually a side effect because of who she's been close to. Not so much Henry, I don't think. Probably more likely the father and what he was messing with, because he's obviously very clearly, because when she says she's going to leave him, he's just like, no, you're not. he's basically very, it feels like she's kind of trapped with him. And even though there was some sketchy stuff like why is he taking Henry out in the middle of the night, I don't think we've had such a clear idea of he is this awful, he is this vindictive's not the right word, but he's this much of a dominant presence in their life until this episode. So
definitely.
But that's interesting. Much of it is interesting.
Very good episode.
Yeah, that's opened a lot of doors. Arguably, it's the most fascinating episode we've had thus far.
Yeah.
And it does mean the cliffhanger from last week. Well, no, obviously it answers the cliffhanger from the end of last week. But in terms of Henry's cliffhanger of being in the chamber, it leaves us lingering on that for another week to come back to and
Yeah.
see what's going on there.
Smart. I feel again that's something that a lot of these shows do, like once a season, right?
Mm.
You make them wait that extra little bit of time.
Yeah, to get back to the main plot. No, this didn't feel, because this is the sort of thing where Ruth has very much been a side character to the main plot throughout the whole season till this point. But she's had all these weird little moments, and then this came in and said, "Okay, here's what was happening with her. Here's what she's going through."
Yeah.
And what about the fallout from this? The fallout of Pangborn being shot by her hand. Is this what it's like, okay, she has to go to a hospital now. She cannot be left in a house in civilization, you know?
Exactly.
Because they'll see this as an outburst. They'll see this as, and maybe it is. You know, we can't definitively say she was doing the right thing. But yeah, but like you say, if this is intentional from the kid, it does feel like vengeance on both of them.
And it's like maybe on them, but I feel you know, both of them, if you take into account the Matthew being part of the kids stuff, but I do feel like it's much more against Pangborn, as in you left me in that trunk, right? You left me in that car.
Yeah.
You're gonna get it for that.
Yeah. But no, so curious to see the reactions to this, especially if Henry gets back to town next episode and see how he reacts. And it makes me wonder, actually, we've been talking a lot about how Molly will help understand the kid. I wonder if she'll also help understand Ruth at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Like, do they use her to try and like sort of filter out and decode her brain in a way?
Yeah, I can see that. Like getting the important message across through that.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Curious. But no, and it makes me wonder as well if this is really Henry's father who's like inside the kid. Like, that adds implications as to why the Warren said find Henry. It also adds implications to if the kid can make people do things, can Henry? And that ties back into, did Henry make Molly subconsciously somehow kill his father?
Yeah, and I think we also have to question, if it is, Matthew in there at all, or does the kid being some sort of entity just able to have knowledge of things that we assume he wouldn't.
It also add up to why Molly all of a sudden is seeing ghost bandaged up Reverend Matthew around. That's why she's feeling that presence again, is because the kid's around and he's what's bringing that out.
Yeah. Interesting stuff.
So, no, lot to chew on in this episode. And no doubt there's some more details that we have missed, so by all means, please do fill us in with any more. And the comments, like and subscribe, all that stuff. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. Keep all the reviews going and just, feel fuzzy inside because you're helping us out. But that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?